Good evening. How are you? Well, today is a stand and talk day. It's raining outside and it's pretty thick, and I don't know if my phone would keep up with me. Um, but uh, that's it. I think it's fun to go out on a very hot day when a cool rain is about you and you're wearing clothes you don't care if you get soaked, or you can wear little enough because it's warm enough. But today's not one of those days. So let's talk about the coldness in our political climate. I don't know if you saw a movie, Serpico, a long time ago with Al Pacino. He is fighting corruption. He is an honest cop and then a detective. And he can't understand why others are not as concerned as he is about corruption. And at one point, he's talking to his girlfriend, who hasn't left him yet because of his single mindedness about routing out corruption. And he says to her that it's like everybody drinks from a fountain and they see things in a different way than he does, and they're corrupt. And he wonders from time to time, maybe he should drink from that fountain because then his life would be so much easier. Well, uh, it might be and it might not be. I've had clients, I told them that they were born suspects, and their mistake was to have been involved in any crime before, and they should think twice about coming back to that because they're getting a history that is going to be hard to overcome. So that was Serpico and corruption. Now, we have really good men and women in our nation who put themselves out there, they put themselves at risk, they are worthy of our support and devotion and contribution and belief. Adam Schiff, in my opinion, is one of those. Oh, sure, from time to time we may disagree about things. I got to know him really in the early days of Trump coverage during the campaign, and then after Trump was elected in the pre-pandemic days. And we would be sitting in the green room, or we'd have occasional talks. I'd see him on the air a lot because I was there to talk about some aspect of either the campaign or Trump's miscues and then corrupt and unlawful acts. And today, they want to hold him, that is, they being the crazy Republicans, they want to hold him and censure him. Now, this evokes for me what Serpico was talking about. That is, that the character Serpico, played by Al Pacino. Some people drink the water and they can't change. My wife Holly and I had this conversation today about why do people do certain things. And I think the answer is that the balance between emotion and intellect, or discipline of reason or common sense, is a split. And it goes like this. There are some people who 76.2% of who they are is emotion: hate, anger, envy, rage, whatever. And the rest may be common sense and reasonableness, or it may be having enough of a thoughtful power to articulate a cover story for the unsupported, evil, emotional acts they take. Now, it can be as small as somebody shooting a black child who comes to the door, the wrong door, or selling cookies or something like that. We have those people. Or it could be people who are shouting like there's no tomorrow, because apparently they don't care if there is one, and telling people to go to the streets and fight, and we're going to be there. Now, I'm encouraged by the fact that as of now, when I'm talking to you, after January the 6th, there has not been such a massive disruption. And while I do think that prosecuting the street deplorables took up a lot of the energy that should have also been spent on investigating Trump and his corrupt minions, what we did was we probably deterred a lot of people from thinking, oh, that'd be a great idea, just run out in the street and say something and Trump will take care of me. We've also seen how Trump does not take care of people, even when he's in the White House with the pardon power. So when he was arraigned in New York on D.A. Bragg's charges, not a big turnout. When he was arraigned down in Florida, no, not a big turnout either. So I think that we probably need not be too anxious about violence, but we can't afford to be lazy when it comes up. Now, along this theme of the corrupt among us, uh, forgive me if you find my memories that spur me from my readings to think in these terms, but I mentioned Sir Thomas More before, and both in the play and in real life, he was concerned about corruption in office. And as a judge, and he sat as a judge, he was a lawyer, but he was also a man of faith. But he was the man of the wrong faith when the Defensor Fidei, that is Henry VIII, decided the only way he could choose an heir was to start his own religion. And then he wanted a loyalty oath from everybody, including Sir Thomas More. But that is not my point. My point is that one of those hangers-on came to him and said he wanted a position. Would More help him get a position? And More had in his hands a gold goblet that had been given to him by somebody who had a case before him. And he says the real test is, could you resist these offerings because they're given a great deal? Could you be independent of this and not be corrupt? Okay, so why am I talking about a gold goblet? Well, do we think a billionaire is a much more excessive example of what Sir Thomas More was getting about with a gold goblet? And so what am I thinking of? I'm thinking of the billionaire that took Alito on a fishing expedition. You know, we have people criticizing investigation, saying they're fishing expeditions. Well, Alito really went on a fishing expedition. And this guy Singer, whom he went with, Paul Singer, had cases before the Supreme Court. Now, if that isn't the photograph of the current day corrupt judge sitting on the bench, not just having billionaires as friends, but going off on a very expensive trip. And, you know, we do remember that Thomas also engages in these things. Now, ProPublica was releasing the story, okay, that Alito went on these fishing trips. And Alito got wind of it, and so he ran to the Wall Street Journal to tell them to scoop, as if he's the one disclosing it, to scoop ProPublica. Well, the bottom line is, no matter where you tell it, the facts are of craven behavior by a man in a position of trust, using that position to feather his nest and go on fishing expeditions and who knows what else. Could we trust them to disclose what they've done? I don't think so. Now, Senator Durbin, who is the chairman of the Judiciary Committee in the Senate, where we have the marginal balance in favor of Democrats, he and Senator Whitehouse have been working on an ethics law that would be binding to judges, just like it is to all the judges lower than the Supreme Court. And I think that the problem here is not that he's proposing it or has to. It is that there's a very good chance that when he passes it out of committee, he may pass it through the Senate, but it won't go through the House. Because the same people who think Adam Schiff should be censured for probing into Trump's misconduct is the same group of Republicans that will defend Alito's right to compromise his oath and the court by these conducts. Now, the best members of the Supreme Court have always spoken in terms of the public trust that allows the Supreme Court to, well, understand, fashion decisions, and promote new areas of the law. Whereas as arrogant as Alito is in his private conduct while a member of the court, he threw out 50 years of precedent with a bullshit piece of garbage that he wrote. And he passes himself off as a judge because he wears a black dress. Not my kind of guy. Not Alito, not Singer, not Thomas, but that's our Supreme Court. Justice Breyer was one of my most recent heroes, and still is. And he's written several books and given lectures and so forth, and he enjoyed for a time being a law professor. And he speaks with such a clear voice. And when I say clear, I mean it. You could just hear the words forming in his mind as he speaks. But one of the themes in his various writings and his speeches is the fact that the trust of America in our law depends on how the justices conduct themselves and how they narrowly advance the law based on the individual case before them and how they remain true to their oath of office. Well, some people on the Supreme Court have not been faithful to their oath of office. And we can see that the law is suffering, and people are therefore prepared to believe every kind of foul thing. And Judge Luce Cannon down in Florida is only one example in the lower courts. But then we have a judge like we had out in Oklahoma who said it's unconstitutional to try to limit trans families from seeking the medical care they need to make a family member comfortable within him or herself. Being a Jesuit-trained individual, and I think I've said the Jesuits teach you how to use your mind, and then they're terrified when you do. But because of that, I did a lot of reading of Aristotle and Socrates, and perhaps I should have realized that a guy like me who liked to argue, and having just recently heard my mom on an old recording, apparently my mom was quite a talker. My dad was not a silent type, but my mom, she talked, and there wasn't an or a pause that was necessary for her to continue speaking, which anybody who's done any public speaking knows that those moments when you're thinking, you shouldn't be going, I mean, I understand it's natural, but there I did it myself. So don't do that. Don't do what I just did. Now, Socrates, he speaks about the man, or, well, they thought only of men really, but the man as a public servant. Aristotle tried to devise a means by which this would happen. That is, that a person would not have these temptations, to power and to money. And so there was a whole series of things that Aristotle constructed that he hoped would make a person of character, and so on. Now, in Aristotle's case, I guess the best example of one of his students is no less than, well, should we say him, we have to be careful of who we teach and how we teach them, because they may set apart to, disappoint us. And so Aristotle, when his greatest student died, fled Athens for fear that the people might misunderstand his role, and so they thought it would be best if if he denied them the opportunity to make the same mistake they made with Socrates. There are great examples of people who tried to follow this code, and Seneca was one of them. You hear me talk about him as a senator from time to time. And he worked for Nero, and all the things he thought and believed when Nero started to go south, however it occurred, he told Seneca to cut off his head. And being a more obedient servant than I think you or I would ever be, that's what he did. So we have this situation in which we seek to find the method by which we can root out corruption in our society, our government, our personal lives. But it continues to be a challenge, and I think perhaps the best we can do is maintain the sea level that we can deal with. Right now, I think we're underwater, and that's why we have to struggle to get back to where we were. And we can't have a student go south on us like Alexander the Great. Aristotle always thought that if he had just had more time with Alexander, it would be okay. I've always thought that a symbol of Alexander's fall was not just the fact that he killed his father to become the king, but when he came upon the Gordian knot, he tried to untie it, but he couldn't do that. So he took a sword and he cut through it. an interesting redefinition of the problem. And so it's no wonder that he died young in combat, drunken supposedly. And when asked who would replace him, he basically said, whomever can hold it together. So that's not our definition of a republic. That's not our definition of how a democracy chooses its leaders, representative of the people in a republic. So I think we have to watch out for corruption and call it where we see it, and not be taken in by these people who speak as if a person somehow or other, because of certain aspects of their public life, guarantee to us that they'll be good in other areas, like those opportunities to be corrupt. I never thought Alito was going to amount to anything as a justice, that is, as a leading legal scholar and a person of great probity that would advance the cause of law in America. But I don't know that I thought he would turn himself and what he does and who he associates with in the oath of office to trash. We don't need that. We may not find heroes all the time, but we do find people that get it and will do what they're doing. I'm hoping, because of some of the recent activity of Jack Smith, that I'm hoping he's such a person. I don't ask that he be a gilded hero. I just ask that he have a strong center and be able to resist the crazy politics that's in the Department of Justice that has compromised us bringing to the law and accountability Trump and his criminals. So that's what I'm thinking on this day of rain outside, and I look forward to talking to you tomorrow. Hopefully I'll be able to get out. All the best. Bye-bye.